Pro wrestling without crowds, yay or nay? Now that crowds have basically returned to wrestling, especially in the WWE and AEW, and even at indie shows as well, at least here in the UK, how do we feel about this? How do I feel about this? I have mixed feelings about crowds returning to wrestling. Let's just go over pro wrestling without crowds. Pro wrestling without crowds was something we never thought would happen unless you were running like a tiny indie show in a city/town where no one watches wrestling. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe you want to lose money for tax reasons. But pro wrestling without crowds, how do we feel about it? Frankly, there are benefits to not having crowds. One, you have the benefit of doing really weird stuff, especially with your editing and the space. WWE really exemplified this, where they did some cool things with the lighting and using I remember I think Extreme Rules last year, where the little puppet animals came out and spoke to Bray Wyatt in his match with Braun Strowman, Rip from the WWE. They did some really cool stuff, and even Kevin Owens did some really cool stuff using the, what's it called? Thunderdome, I believe it was. Yeah, wow, I'm already forgetting. He did some cool stuff where he jumped off that. AEW did some cool stuff with the Stadium Stampede match. I think it was it Stadium. Did they call it Stadium Stampede? Sure, they did. Fine, let's say they did. They did some really cool things. However, there was a lack of atmosphere. You're still seeing this in NXT, where NXT have a crowd again, but it still feels lacking. NXT UK, which I watch every week, except a couple of weeks I've missed, there's no crowd, and they're piping in crowd sound, and the wrestlers are acting like there's a crowd, but there isn't a crowd, and it feels weird. Because I don't think they have the Thunderdome thing, so it's just really missing something. It's missing that energy, which having crowds really brings an energy to it. Like, the wrestlers feed off it. It's great. I think the positivity of the crowd is the energy they bring to the show, especially, and it gives the wrestlers a chance to interact with the crowd, which is just another thing on top. It's like Cena, when he would Hulk up, he'd get the crowd going. You can't do that when you don't have an audience. On the other hand, the crowd can be very annoying, and I think this was SummerSlam. There were points where I didn't like the crowd. They were sitting on their hands when they were watching a great match. They were chanting sometimes really frustratingly, like just chants that were either just bad or inappropriate for the timing, like Fight Forever in a match that's mediocre, or people whining. I hate that. Crowds can sometimes just be a distraction when you're watching. Another negative about the crowds is, at least especially in WWE, they cut a lot to the crowd, and it's very, very annoying, okay? But overall, if we're comparing wrestling without crowds and with crowds, I would say wrestling with crowds is for the best. Wrestling without crowds was a really great experiment that we went through, but I don't think it's where wrestling lies. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. How did you feel about wrestling without crowds for the past year and a bit? Like, subscribe, share that video with a friend and family, and remember, go and watch some great wrestling today.